just don't have as loud a voice as I wish I did. Okay. All right. So now can everybody hear? Great. All right. My name is Dr. Melanie Bone, and I am here today to talk to you a little bit about the basics of cannabis medicine. How did I get here to do this, right? Well, let me explain. I am fairly well known to some of you, I think, because I've been in this community since 1991, and I arrived here and I have been a practicing obstetrician gynecologist and robotic surgeon for decades. And so some of you may know me because of my original affiliation with Temple Israel and working in the community, delivering babies, and doing gynecologic care. I do have 5 children, and I will explain the reason I got involved in cannabis is this child right here. So this is child number 2, and we always joke, if you have enough children, somebody will get in trouble, right? And what happened with Carlton was a nationally ranked debater doing something called Lincoln Douglas debate. But then Carlton discovered this thing called marijuana. And Carlton, I think, ended up liking marijuana, maybe even more than debate, but you never know. They were closely tied. And ultimately, Carlton started performing less well in school. And when you read about the bad things that marijuana do, I kind of started noticing that about Carlton. And to make a long story short, eventually we ended up deciding that Carlton might do well with some time in the woods, sitting in the woods to think about what Carlton was doing with regards to marijuana. And to make a long story short, Carlton spent time in Utah and then at a special school, and eventually came out and went to college, went back to debate for a while, but ultimately said, you know what, Mom, let me tell you why I use marijuana. I use marijuana as my drug of choice to control things like depression, anxiety, and social anxiety in particular. And I've tried the medicines that doctors have given me, and sadly, one of the medicines that Carlton was given for mood stabilization along the way, he got a life-threatening complication from that medicine, and when he was in the intensive care unit and we were worried about losing him, I finally kind of understood what this is all about. For Carlton, that's okay. For Carlton, medicine was how he controlled his anxiety, but not medicine that you buy in a pharmacy. It was medicine called cannabis. And Carlton begged me to start learning more about it, and I did. And the more I learned, the more it made sense to me. And now today, Carlton and I work together in the cannabis industry, and I've learned everything I know pretty much from Carlton. All right? I am also a long-term cancer survivor. I think some of you might have known it's now 19 years since I was diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer. And I went through a lot of treatments, and for many years, I devoted myself to sponsoring a lot of things to do with breast cancer. I'm still very much a cancer advocate, but now I utilize where cancer and cannabis come together as the way I'm able to support both of these interests. I do have my own private cannabis practice on Dixie Highway in West Palm Beach, but in my role here at Morse Life, those of you who wish to have a cannabis consultation with me will be able to do so. I do write, I speak, and mostly I'm an educator. And this is where I'm happy to say I'm here today to talk about and educate you about cannabis. Just as a disclosure, I'm not technically employed by Morse Life. There is a couple in this area who are sponsoring me to come here and do this because they are so interested in understanding how well cannabinoids can help the over 65 population. And I don't receive any money from the industry either, so I just want you to understand that. But let's get right to the topic. So what's cannabis? Some of you all know from the 60s what cannabis is firsthand, I bet, right? Now, you don't have to raise your hand, but you might sort of think to yourself, did I ever use cannabis at some point in my younger years? And I find that a lot of people that come to see me have. Maybe they used it once in college and didn't have a good experience. And so now they may think it might help them, but they're a little bit afraid because they had a bad experience. Other people used it for a while and then stopped. Well, cannabis is a plant. It has been around for thousands of years. The next lecture in the series that I want to give is going to be on the history of cannabis, which is really, really fascinating. But probably cannabis started 3,000 years ago, 3,000 BC, in Asia. And it slowly made its way around the world. It first started to be used here in America. You know, Jamestown, the settlers, they brought hemp. And hemp was used for fiber. And we'll talk about that too. So it's a plant. It has the name Cannabis sativa. But Cannabis sativa is the same as hemp, or what you think of as marijuana. The difference between the two plants is that they're different species in the genus of cannabis. So hemp is bred to have very low amounts of this thing called THC. THC, just remember that it has an H in it and it gets you high. All right? And hemp is designed not to get you high, and that's why it has such a tiny amount of THC in it. Cannabis that we use for medicinal purposes is bred to have higher amounts of THC. And for some people we use one formulation, and for other people we use another formulation. But essentially, they're the same plant. So just to drill down a little more about what's the difference between hemp and cannabis as we know it. Hemp, fiber, think clothing. Hemp clothing is very durable. Hemp actually can even be used as a food source. Hemp seeds, you can buy them on Amazon and add them to your smoothie. They have essential amino acids in them. They have great fatty acids in them, and they have protein. They're a wonderful food additive. Interestingly, there's now even something called hempcrete. What's hempcrete? Well, you've heard of concrete to make buildings. You can make concrete out of hemp. It's called hempcrete. And what's amazing about it is it's naturally antifungal. Think about building, mold, bacteria. Hempcrete doesn't have that problem where it will get moldy. So hemp has just a myriad of usages in our society, and it would be nice if we made use of more of them. Marijuana, or the other form of cannabis sativa, is designed to be more pharmacological. So it has the THC and it has the other cannabinoids. So this is the thing. The terminology in cannabis is really confusing. Cannabidiol, tetrahydrocannabidiol. Think of it as this. Anything that starts with the first two letters CB are cannabinoids. Even THC is a cannabinoid. But anything that starts with CB is not going to get you high. It's the one that has the H in it that gets you high. Okay? So when we talk about cannabis, there's different strains. Like if you make and grow tomatoes, right? You could get an ugly tomato, a beefsteak tomato, a yellow tomato. Well, this plant has different subsets. And you'll see down there, there's the short stubby leaves that we call the indica marijuana, and the skinny long leaves that we call the sativa marijuana. For years, people have really wanted to utilize the difference between these two types of plants for how they work in a medicinal context. Classically, we tell people if you have the short stubby indica, the effect that indica will have on you is it will make you in the couch. That's what we say. That's how you remember it. In the couch. I feel like sitting around and eating popcorn and watching movies because that's what my indica does. So indicas tend to be more sedating and relaxing. Sativas, and I always think of it as they're short and spiny, and it would be like if somebody hit you with spine, you'd be really awake. So sativas are more uplifting, and many people can use sativas during the day, and it makes them more creative. It gets the creative juices flowing, but it doesn't make you lazy. So I think a lot of people think, oh, marijuana, it makes you high and lazy. But sativas are very good to get you uplifted and energized. And then, of course, we have hybrids, somewhere in between the two. And they're mixtures. And what we do is we say, well, if your mixture has more indica in it, you might feel a little more indica. But if it has more sativa, you might feel more uplifted. As we go on in medicine, you're going to see that the distinction indica-sativa is slowly going by the wayside in terms of the basic components of cannabis. So what are those components? We said THC, it's got the H, it gets you high. CBD, but there's more than CBD. Just remember, anything that starts with CB doesn't get you high. They do a lot of the same things and they overlap. And there are these things called terpenes. Terpenes are very important to marijuana. Terpenes are what make things smell like they smell. So a lemon smells lemony because it's got limonene. And a pine tree smells like pine because of pinene. And it's the combination of the CBs, the THC, and the terpenes that make marijuana do what it's supposed to do. But everybody probably has heard about CBD because you open a newspaper, you go onto Amazon, anything. Buy your CBD here. Buy it online, $19.99 for CBD. CBD is very complex, okay? You'll read here. Remember what we said. Anything that starts with CB does not get you high. THC is psychoactive. It gets you high. I all the time have patients say, well, what does that feel like? And I say, well, it might be kind of like being drunk for some people or tipsy, but for many people, it's a completely different feeling. But if you've ever had a little glass of wine, you could use a little bit and maybe nothing would happen, but if you drank 3 glasses of wine, you would be impaired. The same thing goes with marijuana, okay? If you have marijuana that's high in CBD, it could be for epilepsy and be against convulsions. It could be anti-inflammatory. Now, inflammation is the key word of the century, right? Everybody's trying to eliminate inflammation in their body through diet, through medications, through exercise, through supplements. CBD is a natural anti-inflammatory agent. So when you have something like pain whose underlying cause might be inflammation, you definitely need CBD to get at that inflammation. But on the other hand, look at the THC. As you get down in the middle, you'll see analgesic. That means takes pain away. So THC is very good for taking pain away, but the CBD is good for the inflammation. So think the two of them together are going to be better than either one apart. The problem with THC is as you get to the bottom, you'll see euphoria, paranoia, anxiety. Well, how can it give you euphoria, make you feel great, but then make you feel paranoid? It's one of the problems with THC. A little might be good, but a lot might not be so good. So our job as cannabis practitioners is to help you get just the sweet spot, just the right amount. So you maybe get the analgesia, but without the negative side effects. So this is something called a wheel. It's very complicated, but I always show it to my patients because it helps guide me. What's your problem? What do you need? So probably the number 1 and 2 things people come for are arthritis and pain. And you may not be able to easily see it, but you will see CBC, CBD, CBN, CBG, THC. What does that mean? That means that those problems, arthritis and pain, will need some amount of CB and some amount of THC to get the job done. And this guy, Dr. Russo, we call him the father of cannabis. He's a very famous doctor. And as he says, cannabis is the single most versatile herbal remedy and the best plant on earth, basically. And no other plant can do all the things that cannabis does. Okay? As we pointed out before, CBD, remember, not psychoactive, does a lot of things, but all CBD is not created equal, right? So how can you go online and see CBD for $19.99 and then CBD for $119.99? And like, what do you buy? How do you know what you're getting? And that's the biggest problem with CBD to date. So remember, CBD you can get from hemp. CBD you can get from marijuana. It's anti-inflammatory and not psychoactive. But here's the more complex story. If you get just plain CBD, we call it isolate, isolated CBD. It doesn't have THC, it doesn't have CBC, CBN, CBG, just CBD. Might work, might not work so great. Because remember what I showed you, using things together is better than using one thing alone. But for people who are very anxious and don't want to have any THC, they want to avoid that THC, they might get what's called an isolate. On the other hand, you could get something called broad spectrum CBD, and this is where reading the fine print is so important. What's broad spectrum? It has all those CBs in it. Still no THC. Good, I think better than an isolate, but not as good as what we call full spectrum. Full spectrum is going to have the whole bunch of ball wax in it. It'll have all the CBs, the THC, and a teeny tiny bit of THC, 0.3% or less. How do you know you're getting good stuff? You should be able to read something called a COA, a Certificate of Analysis. And if your product doesn't have a way to review the COA, you probably shouldn't buy it. On that COA, it shows that they took their product and sent it somewhere to get tested. And it had what it said it had in it. CBD, CBN, no THC. They test for heavy metals. They test for bacteria. They test for mold. And believe it or not, hemp is a very thirsty plant. So it'll suck up anything from the land. So if you grow it in a bad spot, you're not going to get a good quality product. Which is why pretty much the best hemp comes from places like Kentucky and Colorado and Oregon. And we're trying to get it grown here in Florida and in good ways. So here's a wheel that we just say, if you're going to get a good quality product, what might it help? Remember, we don't have a huge number of randomized trials to prove this, but there are lovely studies done all over the world, in particular Israel. Israel does the best marijuana research. Whoops, can you go back? So you can see here, CBDA, it's a subset of CBD, reduces inflammation, inhibits cancer. We're never going to tell you CBD can treat cancer, but we can tell you it doesn't seem to promote cancer in any way. But look at all these things that people are looking at as possible usages for CBD. And as you go all the way around the wheel, you will see, as Dr. Russo said, lots and lots of applications for this plant. Remember I told you there are 3 parts to the plant. CB, not psychoactive, anti-inflammatory. THC, yes, psychoactive. Analgesia, euphoria, right? The 3rd part are the terpenes, and I told you, they're smell profiles. So what we do is we say, what smell profiles make you feel awake and alert? I would tell you pine and lemon do, right? And isn't it interesting? Pine and lemon are found in cleansers. Pine Sol, Lysol. They have always got a version that's got pine and a version with lemon. And that's because they're natural antibacterial agents. On the other hand, if you want to relax, what do you do at the spa? You smell a lot of lavender in the air, right? Oh, we're going to put this lavender sachet near you while we do your massage. Because lavender, the smell of lavender, has terpenes that are relaxing. So the terpenes are found in the marijuana, and it helps to guide us as to which marijuana would be best for you. I know this is complicated. I'm trying to make it so you can understand. This is just a chart where we say, what are these terpenes all about? On the left is citrus, lemon. It's elevated mood. You know, they did a really cool study where they took some depressed and anxious people in a room, and all they did was pump in air that smelled like lemons, and they said they felt better. Pine is very similar, and we were just showing lavender and woody or spicy can also help with relaxation. Okay. So when we look at all of these things together, we have something called the entourage effect. The entourage effect is how using all these different parts of the plant, CBs, THC, and terpenes, produce the effect that you want. And this is why we become marijuana physicians, because it's really complicated. And what we hope to do here at Morse moving forward is to integrate cannabinoid medicine. Why? Because there are lots of data now seeming to support that we can treat ailments alongside with other things you're already doing. And then some people can substitute, other people do them both together for things like chronic pain of arthritis, anxiety, sleeplessness, restlessness, and appetite management for weight loss. Remember, our goal is to improve your alertness and your focus and make it so that you can have your best life here at Morse. And I want to stop here and answer questions and take anything. I do want to tell you that at the end, I have an anonymous questionnaire where we want to give you what's best for you. And basically, it will let me know whether you were hitting the nail on the head here or whether you want to learn something else. And also, if you're interested in a free cannabinoid consultation with me, you can fill out the other form and we will arrange that for you. There's no charge for this, and it's all done very privately, okay? So does anybody have any pressing questions? Yes. Can you be allergic? What a great question. So I have been doing exclusively cannabinoid medicine for the last 4 months, but I've been in practice doing cannabis for 4 years. I've never had a patient be allergic. However, I have had some patients who say if they use a certain strain, that strain may make them feel a little itchy or their throat hurt a little, and we try a different strain. But just like anything, theoretically, you could be allergic, but I have not seen any allergic reactions. Yes?
So you would take one medication.
Okay. So are there any serious contraindications to using cannabis? Well, theoretically, cannabis can have some impact on your blood. So when we first started studying cannabis, we wanted to look at people who were not on things like blood thinners. When you sign the state consent form to get your medical marijuana card, there is a paragraph in there that says that if you are on blood thinners, Coumadin, Eliquis, etc., you need to use cannabis with caution. Again, with 4 years under my belt, I haven't had a patient get into trouble with their blood thinners, but we always want to know what other medications you're on so we can take that into consideration. The other thing is that, anything you're on that can alter your perceptions, some of the antidepressant, anti-anxiety medications, we just keep that in mind, and we start the rule of marijuana. Start low, a very low dose, and slowly titrate upwards so that you avoid interactions. Okay? Yes?
Covered by our medical insurance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll answer that in 1 second. Yes? I don't know of any specific studies on cannabis and A1C levels, but I can see that there's a possibility that there's some things going on there. If you use an indica and you eat a lot, it's going to negatively impact your A1C, but there is there's cannabis that actually decreases your appetite and may actually improve your A1C, but you wouldn't use it as a way to change your A1C. A1C is called hemoglobin A1C. It's a blood test that doctors use to see how your blood sugar has been controlled over the last 3 months. You know, when we check your blood sugar level, it's what it's doing that day. When we check your hemoglobin A1C, it's how have you been over the last couple of months. And it's very commonly used to monitor sugar control in diabetics and to screen as well. There was a question about insurance. So you must remember, federally, cannabis is still a Schedule I drug, which means it is illegal. I cannot write a prescription for cannabis. However, the state level, it's legal. And this is the case. There are 34 states now where cannabis is legal. It's going to make its way through the country. I don't think it's ever going to stop now. But we are not allowed to write a prescription. So how does this whole thing work? We write a recommendation. So we give you advice and we say to you, gosh, given what you have, my experience, literature, I believe you could be helped by cannabis. And then you get your card from the state once I approve you for a card. And then together we work to get you your best medicine. But unlike other medicines where I say to you, well, you take 1 Percocet every 4 hours for pain, I can say to you, well, I believe you would be best suited to try this much, given this way, 1 time a day, 2 times a day, 5 times a day, whatever we decide. But together we come to figure out what works best for you. But we don't technically call it a prescription, and therefore it is not covered by insurance at this time. Yes. So medical marijuana has many different ways of being implemented. We will get into it more in one of the next lectures I'm giving, but essentially we can do everything from a cream to a patch to it looks like a little vaporization pen. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's very popular. To drops under your tongue, to pills that you take. There are many ways to get marijuana. And nowadays, even in Florida, we can actually get you approved to smoke a joint that you can buy at a dispensary. But that is not how we start. We don't start with smokable flower. We start with one of the other ways where I feel like we have more control. Okay? Other, yes?
When you start, if you do on the cannabis, do you continue with all your medication?
Excellent question. When you start with cannabis, do you stay on your other medication? Well, I call it subtraction by addition. What does that mean? So we add the cannabis first without stopping anything, and then we see what happens. And this is my experience, especially with pain medicine and anxiety medicine. Very, very rapidly, people stop taking as much. I notice that most of my patients that start medical cannabis will reduce their opioid consumption by 50% within the first 3 to 6 months. And pretty much the same thing with anxiety medication and sleep. Do they get all the way off? Some people do, some people don't. But we don't tell them, wean this way, stop this, do this, do this. It's very organic the way it happens. People just say, well, it came time when I would take my Percocet. I just didn't sort of feel like I needed it. I was able to wait another couple of hours. And then the next thing you know, they've been taking 6 a day, and now they're down to 3 a day, or 2 a day. And that's how it happens. Yes? Cost? So cost is very variable. The state charges $77 a year to get your card. dispensaries charge usually in the neighborhood, I would say, of $50 to $200 a month, depending on how much marijuana you use. I have a lot of people that don't use very much, and it costs them maybe $50 in a month. And most dispensaries have, new patient specials, and if you shop the specials, you can get a deal. It's like using coupons. Yes?
What you're saying is it could be used as a topical?
You can use marijuana as a
Have you
topical.
tested? How do you know which way to apply it?
Well, I guide you depending upon. So here's the thing, a lot of people go, well, can't I just use a topical? I have terrible arthritis. Well, if you have arthritis like in your elbow, yeah, you can apply a cream, it will work nicely. But when your whole body is in pain, you can't really take a bath in the marijuana, it's too expensive. So we tend to nose patients to use different approaches than just a cream. But a cream can be very helpful for many, many things. Yes, ma'am. Your card? Yes, your card expires every 12 months. So at 11 months, you usually will get an email from the state that says it's time to renew your card. And you can renew your card yourself without going to your practitioner. Yes. Right. I work very closely with oncologists treating cancer patients. Probably some of the best studies done on cannabis have to do with helping nausea, vomiting, and poor appetite associated with chemotherapy and radiation therapy. But I will also tell you that there are some people it helps them with sleep, pain, and therefore there's a huge application of cannabis for cancer patients. And I work with them every day on achieving their best well-being while they're undergoing, but it doesn't seem to interfere with treatments.
What if your doctor doesn't like the idea?
Well, this is an issue. There are many doctors who are, well, most oncologists these days are pretty much okay with cannabis. You know why? There's a medicine that they use all the time called Marinol. Marinol is to help your appetite when you're going through cancer treatments. And Marinol is in fact synthetic THC. So it's funny. I can write a prescription for Marinol. Any doctor can write a prescription. So the government will allow us to write prescriptions for synthetic THC, but not natural THC. There's some discrepancies in the law that are very odd. They don't let us write for natural marijuana, but we can do synthetic. It doesn't really make sense. Anybody else? Okay, I'll be here after if you want to come up and ask a private question. If you would mind filling out one of those, they're anonymous, and it will help us to guide knowing what you want to learn more about. And I'll also be able to set up appointments for anybody who's interested in learning more. And I thank you. Yes.